You know what fascinates me about retirement advice? It's not the strategies, it's not the calculators. It's the fact that some of the worst guidance you'll ever hear is also the most repeated. It sounds responsible, it sounds smart, it sounds like the kind of thing a careful person should follow, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Before we continue, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, this would be a really good time to do it. I've got a lot more of these waiting for you. The real question isn't what's the best retirement advice out there, it's which pieces of advice are quietly steering you in the wrong direction without you ever realizing it. Because here's the truth, nobody likes to say out loud. A lot of the rules people are following in 2026 were built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. The economy has shifted, inflation looks different, pensions are rare, healthcare costs are higher, and yet the same old advice keeps getting passed around like it's still gospel. So today, I want to walk you through the 6 worst pieces of retirement planning advice people are still following right now. And by the end of this, I think you're going to see your own plan in a completely new light. Let's start with the first one, and it's a big one. You need $1 million to retire. You've heard it. I've heard it. It shows up in every magazine, every blog post, every financial commercial on television. $1 million. That's the magic number. And if you don't have it, you're behind. Now imagine walking onto a car lot. Every vehicle has a sticker price, bold, official, intimidating. It looks final, non-negotiable. But if you've ever bought a car, you already know the truth. Nobody pays the sticker. There are hidden discounts, dealer incentives, timing advantages, negotiation room. The real price is almost always lower. But the sticker exists to anchor your expectations, to make you feel like anything below it is a win, even if you're still overpaying. Now take that exact same system and apply it to retirement. That $1 million number, that's your sticker price. It's not a real target for you. It was never built around your life, your expenses, your income sources, or your goals. It was built to make a headline. It was built to sell financial products. And it has quietly convinced millions of people that they are behind when many of them are not. Here's the thing. Most people are being told they are behind when they're not. Let's meet 2 people. The first one, let's call him Frank. Frank is 67. He spent over 3 decades working a steady, dependable job. Nothing flashy, no big windfalls, just consistency. If you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think, there goes someone financially secure. You might actually think the opposite. Frank lives in a modest home. He drives an older car. And if you looked strictly at his savings, you'd probably panic for him, because Frank has around $140,000 saved. By the standards you've been taught, Frank is behind. But here's what you don't see when you only look at that number. Frank has a monthly pension. He has Social Security income. His home is fully paid off. Every single month, without touching his savings, money shows up, consistently, predictably. Frank is not struggling. Frank is not stressed. Frank is living a life that works. Now let's meet Gary. Gary did everything right, at least according to the rules he was given. He saved aggressively. He invested diligently. He followed the benchmarks. And today, Gary has $800,000 saved. On paper, Gary is a success story, but Gary doesn't feel like one. Gary still has a mortgage. Gary doesn't have a pension. Gary relies heavily on his investment account to fund his life. Every market fluctuation feels personal. Gary has more money than Frank, but less peace. It's not about who has more saved. It's about who has more certainty. Let that sink in. Because most people walk into retirement focused on account balances. They look at their 401k, their IRA, their savings, and they ask, is this enough? And if the number doesn't feel big enough, they feel behind, even if they have something incredibly valuable sitting right in front of them. The goal of retirement is not wealth, it's income. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money or more certainty, which would it be? Keep that in your head as we go, because the next piece of bad advice plays directly off this confusion. The second worst piece of advice you're still hearing in 2026 is this. Take Social Security as early as possible because you don't know how long you'll live. On the surface, it sounds reasonable. It sounds practical. It sounds like the kind of advice your uncle would give you at a holiday dinner. Get yours while you can. But here's where it gets real. This advice ignores something fundamental about how Social Security actually works. Think of your benefit like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, it all builds pressure in that pipe. Now here's how it works. The longer you wait to turn the faucet on, the stronger the pressure becomes. Wait until 70, the flow is powerful. Turn it on at 62, the flow is lighter. But here's the part most people don't think about. That faucet belongs to you. You paid into it. And if you wait too long to turn it on, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone. So the answer isn't simple. The answer isn't always early. The answer isn't always late. The real question isn't, should you take Social Security at 62? It's when does taking it at 62 actually make sense for you? For some people, taking it early is the right call. Maybe their health is uncertain, maybe they don't have other income sources, and they need it now. Maybe they want to stop working and enjoy life while they still can. For others, waiting is the smarter move. Maybe they're still working, maybe their spouse will rely on a survivor benefit, maybe they want that bigger monthly check for the rest of their life. The point is, the decision isn't universal, it's personal, and anyone who tells you there's one right answer is selling you a story, not a strategy. And here's something most people don't know. The Social Security Administration used to have a calculator on their website that helped people figure out the best time to claim. They removed it. Why? Because people kept using it incorrectly. They were plugging in assumptions that didn't match their real lives, and they were making decisions based on numbers that didn't apply to them, so they took it down. Think about that for a second. Even the people running the system know how easy it is to get this wrong. The question isn't, what's the best age? It's what's the best decision for your life right now. Here's the third piece of advice that needs to go. Pay off your mortgage before you retire, no matter what. Now, I want to be careful here because for many people, paying off the mortgage is absolutely the right move. There's peace of mind, there's lower monthly expenses, there's freedom. But the problem with this advice is the no matter what part, because sometimes paying off the mortgage means draining accounts that could have given you income for the next 20 years. Sometimes it means cashing out investments at the wrong time. Sometimes it means losing a low interest rate that you'll never see again. Think about it this way. Your income floor is like the foundation of your house. Strong, underground, invisible, but holding everything up. Your savings? That's more like the furniture. Nice to have, comfortable, but it sits on top of something else. Most people focus on decorating the furniture while ignoring whether the foundation is solid. If you drain your savings to wipe out a mortgage, you might feel good in the moment, but you may have just weakened the very foundation you were trying to protect. The smarter approach is to look at the full picture. What's your interest rate? What would that money earn if you kept it invested? What does your monthly cash flow look like with the mortgage versus without it? And most importantly, will paying it off give you peace or will it give you pressure? Because if writing that final mortgage check leaves you nervous about every other expense, you didn't gain freedom. You traded one stress for another. Numbers matter, but how you feel about those numbers, that matters just as much. What do you think? Are most people actually behind on retirement? Or are they just measuring it wrong? Because the next piece of advice is one of the biggest reasons people feel like they're falling short, even when they're not. The fourth piece of bad advice is this. Your expenses will drop dramatically in retirement, so you don't need as much as you think. This one is repeated so often it's almost treated as fact. People assume that once they stop working, the spending stops too. No more commute, no more work clothes, no more lunches out. The kids are grown, the house is paid off, life gets cheaper, right? Not quite. Because here's what actually happens. Some expenses do go down, but others quietly rise to take their place. Healthcare costs go up, often dramatically. Travel becomes a bigger line item because suddenly you have the time. Hobbies cost money. Home repairs don't stop. Helping kids and grandkids becomes a real expense for many families. And then there's inflation, the silent eroder, quietly chipping away at your purchasing power year after year. Most people underestimate their retirement expenses by a lot. Not a little, a lot. They build a plan based on a number that feels reasonable, and then real life happens. A new roof, a medical bill, a trip they didn't plan for, a grandchild's wedding, and suddenly the number they thought was enough isn't quite enough. Inflation doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps, it nudges, it slowly raises the cost of everything you buy. Your groceries cost more, your utilities cost more, your insurance premiums cost more, and if your income isn't keeping up, you're silently losing ground every single year. It's not pessimism, it's realism. And in this case, realism isn't negative, it's empowering. Because once you understand this, you stop guessing. You start tracking. You look at what you actually spent last year, not what you think you spent. You build a plan around real numbers, not hopeful ones. And here's where the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, comes into play. Social Security does adjust for inflation, but those adjustments have limits. They're based on a specific measure of inflation that doesn't always match what retirees actually experience. Healthcare, for example, often rises faster than the COLA can keep up with. So while your check gets a small bump each year, your real expenses may be growing faster. The gap between what you receive and what you actually need can widen invisibly, steadily, over decades. That's why the income floor matters so much. That's why guaranteed income matters so much. Because the more of your essential expenses you can cover with stable, predictable income, the less you have to worry about inflation eating away at your savings. Quick question. Have you ever felt guilty about spending money in retirement? That feeling shows up more than you think. And it usually shows up because people don't have a clear picture of what they can actually afford. They've been told to save, 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 but never taught how to spend. So they retire with a pile of money and no permission to use it. That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of stress. Which brings us to the fifth piece of bad advice. Keep your money invested aggressively in retirement so it keeps growing. Now, I understand the logic. People are living longer. Retirement could last 25, 30, even 35 years. So you need growth. You need your money to keep working. And yes, some growth in retirement is important. Inflation makes that necessary. But aggressive investing in retirement is where a lot of people get hurt. And there's a name for the risk that comes with it. It's called sequence of returns risk. Let me explain it without the jargon. Imagine two people retire with the exact same amount of money. They withdraw the same amount each year. They have the same investments. The only difference is timing. One of them retires right before a big market downturn. The other retires right after. The one who retires before the downturn watches their account drop while they're still pulling money out. They're selling investments at low prices to fund their life. And even when the market recovers, they never fully catch up. The other person, who got lucky with timing, sees their account grow during their early retirement years. They withdraw from a rising balance. Their money lasts much longer. Same plan, same investments, same withdrawals, completely different outcomes. And the difference came down to one thing: timing they couldn't control. That's the silent pressure of sequence risk. It doesn't show up in your financial plan, it doesn't show up in your projections, but it can quietly destroy the entire structure of your retirement if you're not prepared for it. So the advice to stay aggressive in retirement misses a critical point. It's not just about growth, it's about protecting yourself from bad timing. And the way you do that is by having an income floor that doesn't depend on the market. Social Security, pensions, annuities for some people, stable, predictable income that keeps showing up no matter what the stock market is doing. I want you to imagine your retirement in two parts, not one big number, two distinct piles. Pile 1, income that shows up no matter what. This includes things like Social Security, pensions, rental income, money that continues whether the market is up or down. Pile 2, your savings, your investments, your accounts. Now here's the critical mistake most people make. They focus almost entirely on Pile 2, while barely acknowledging Pile 1. And yet Pile 1 is often doing far more heavy lifting than people realize. When you have a strong Pile 1, you can take more measured risks with Pile 2. When Pile 1 is weak, every market drop feels like an emergency. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself. Not what you hope, not what you assume, what you actually know will be coming in. If you can't answer that question clearly, that's not a failure. That's a starting point. Now let's get to the sixth and final piece of bad advice. And honestly, this might be the most damaging one of all. Don't worry about a plan for your spouse. They'll be fine. This is the advice nobody wants to talk about. It's uncomfortable. It involves thinking about things we'd rather not think about, but it's also one of the most important conversations you can have. Because here's the reality. In most married couples, one spouse will outlive the other. And when that happens, the financial picture changes overnight. Social Security checks get reduced. Pensions may stop entirely or drop significantly. Expenses don't go down by half just because there's one person instead of two. The house still costs the same. The utilities still cost about the same. The property taxes don't change. And suddenly, the surviving spouse is facing a completely different financial reality with much less income to support it. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Not in a morbid way, in a practical way, because the couples who plan for this scenario, who build it into their retirement strategy, end up protecting each other in ways that most people never consider. They look at survivor benefits before choosing when to take Social Security. They think about pension elections carefully, not just for today, but for 20 years from now. They make sure life insurance is in place when it makes sense. They have honest conversations about the house, about expenses, about what the surviving spouse would actually need. And the ones who don't plan for it, they leave behind a partner who's grieving and suddenly facing financial decisions they're not prepared to make. That's not a legacy. That's a burden. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. And clarity includes planning for the moments you hope never come. Here's something to think about. If you found out today that you're actually on track, how would that change your week? How would you sleep tonight? How would you talk to your spouse over dinner? Because for a lot of people, the anxiety they carry about retirement isn't based on reality. It's based on advice that was never built for their life. And once that advice gets removed, once they see their actual numbers clearly, something changes. The fear lifts, the pressure eases, they start to see what was actually there the whole time. So let's pull this all together, because by now, you've seen 6 pieces of advice that get repeated constantly but quietly mislead people every single day. The $1 million myth, the take it early Social Security trap, the pay off the mortgage no matter what assumption, the expenses will drop fantasy, the stay aggressive forever risk, and the don't worry about your spouse mistake. Each one of these sounds reasonable on the surface. Each one is built on a kernel of truth. But each one, when followed blindly, can quietly erode the very retirement you've worked your whole life to build. So what do you do instead? Here's what I want you to do. First, figure out your income floor. What money is coming in every month, no matter what? Social Security, pensions, anything stable and predictable. That number matters more than you've been told. Second, calculate your real expenses, not based on your current salary, based on your actual life. Housing, food, healthcare, travel, the things you truly care about. Because retirement isn't about replacing income, it's about supporting your lifestyle. Third, find the gap. What's the difference between your income and your expenses? That gap is what your savings need to cover, not $1.4 million, not some generic benchmark, just the gap. And once you see that, the entire conversation changes. Fourth, stress test your plan. What happens if the market drops the year you retire? What happens if inflation runs higher than expected? What happens if one spouse passes earlier than planned? You don't have to predict the future. You just have to prepare for the possibilities. And fifth, give yourself permission to enjoy what you've built, because too many people spend their entire retirement afraid to spend a dollar. They saved their whole lives so they could finally live, and then they forgot to actually live. That's not a successful retirement. That's just postponed anxiety. Let me ask you something. If you could go back 10 years, what would you do differently with your retirement planning? For most people, the answer isn't save more. The answer is understand more. Understand the income side, not just the savings side. Understand the real expenses, not just the assumed ones. Understand the risks, not just the returns. Understand the partner, not just the portfolio, because that's the shift. That's the moment everything changes. You stop chasing a number that was never yours, and you start building a life that actually fits. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Stop feeling behind and start focusing on what truly gives you freedom. You are not behind. In fact, you may already be standing on one of the strongest financial foundations available today. You just couldn't see it because the advice you were given pointed you in the wrong direction. You were looking at the furniture when you should have been checking the foundation. You were chasing the sticker price when the real price was always lower. You were measuring wealth when you should have been measuring certainty. Here's a thought. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. How does that make you feel? Because that's the trap. That's the quiet lie sitting at the center of so much retirement advice. It keeps you working longer than you need to. It keeps you worrying more than you should. It keeps you measuring yourself against numbers that were never built for you. But once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. And that's a good thing. That's the beginning of real clarity. Retirement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something new, a new rhythm, a new pace, a new way of living. And the goal isn't just to survive it. The goal is to enjoy it, to wake up without financial stress, to make decisions without fear, to live with confidence, not hesitation. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. But if you understand your numbers, if you build your income, if you define your life on your terms, you don't chase anymore. You decide. And that's the shift from fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You don't need to get everything exactly right. What you need is awareness, clarity, and the willingness to face the real numbers so you can make real decisions. Because when you understand your income, when you understand your expenses, when you understand how your plan holds up over time, something changes. You feel more in control, more confident, more at ease. And that's what retirement should feel like. Not a finish line you barely cross, not a cliff you're afraid to step off, a door you walk through with your head up because you know what's waiting on the other side, and you know you built it on purpose. So the next time someone tells you that you need $1 million, or that you should take Social Security as soon as possible, or that your expenses will magically drop, or that your spouse will figure it out, pause for a second. Ask yourself if that advice was built for your life or just repeated because it's easy to say. Ask yourself whether it's helping you build certainty or just adding pressure. And then make the decision that's right for you, not for the headline, not for the magazine, not for your neighbor, for you. Because that's what real planning looks like. It's not loud, it's not flashy. It's quiet, steady, and personal. It's the kind of planning that doesn't just get you to retirement, it gets you through it with peace, with purpose, and with the freedom to actually enjoy the life you worked so hard to build. If this video made you think differently about your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.